Greetings to all my friends on YouTube and Facebook and wherever else this video is going to be seen and shared. SaleenDriver, or Dane if you prefer, depending on how you know me. Coming to you this afternoon, sort of I guess you'd call it a response rant. Yesterday being July 30th, I heard bits and pieces of a speech by one of our so-called political luminaries, who shall remain nameless because, well, I don't want him to say his name. He's an idiot anyway. He always was an idiot. He is an idiot. He will be an idiot. He's also always was, is, and will be a hater of all things American. But that's neither here nor there for the purposes of this discussion. And one of the things he was talking about was a subject that's bothered me for quite a while, and that is voter ID, or more specifically, the requirement that you need a photo ID in order to get in and vote. And as I make this video, we're about, 90 odd days away from a presidential election, probably the most consequential presidential election in the history of this country, certainly in my lifetime. And there is always the potential for voter fraud in any election at any time. But people seem to lose their minds over the idea that you need an ID to vote. And this puzzles me. And so I sat down and I did a little research online, insisting, as setting a rule for myself, that I find non-political sites to find this information. And I put together a list of what turned out to be 30 things, and I'm sure this list is not exhaustive, but 30 things that you need an ID for. And yet we don't find that the requirement for an ID is racist in any way to do these things or get these things or accomplish these things. Yet it's racist to require an ID to vote. And I don't see the logic in that at all. And I'm sorry, maybe it's a failing on my part. Maybe I was raised the right way. And I think maybe it's the logic of having to prove who you are in order to vote in an election. Certainly in my state of Florida, you need an ID to vote. I have to show an ID every time I go vote in my county. And I believe that rule is uniform across the state. But yet in other parts of the country, it's racist to ask for an ID to vote. Really? Okay. Is it racist to require an ID to buy alcohol? First item on my list. Buying alcohol. I have to show an ID to buy alcohol even though I have gray hair, because they need to punch my exact birth date into the computer now. It used to be just flash them the ID, they look at the birth year and they say, okay, you're fine, good to go. But now they actually have to put the date in the computer, in the cash register, which is a computer. So buying alcohol is not racist to ask for an ID. Buying cigarettes. Now, I buy cigarettes for my dad now. He is no longer able to drive, and of course, with the whole thing going on, which I'm not allowed to mention or else YouTube demonetizes me. But you know what I'm talking about. He doesn't want to go out anyway. But in order to buy cigarettes, I have to show an ID, even with the gray hair, because they have to put my birth date into the computer in order to unlock the computer. So Buying cigarettes. Have to show an ID. Is that racist? I don't know. I'm an old white guy. I mean, an old Jewish white guy. So, technically I belong to a racial minority, but, everyone who looks at me sees an old white guy. So, but is showing an ID for cigarettes racist? Or are the protests for that? Because I know I've stood in line behind black people and Mexican people and other Hispanic people and people of Asian descent, people of all descents, really. And I've stood behind them when they're buying alcohol or cigarettes, and they have to show ID. And yet nobody in front of me in line scream racism at the top of their lungs. So it's curious to me. Curious to you? Opening a bank account. I have to show ID to open a bank account. Are banks racists? Well, that's another subject for another video. Applying for food stamps. Applying for welfare. Applying for Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. All those things. Applying for unemployment benefits. All those things you have to show ID. Are all those things racist? Curious. And when I apply for a job, when I've applied for a job and gotten a job, and I walk in the first day of work, the first thing they do is they grab my photo ID and they make a photocopy of it and they put it in my HR file. Is the company I work for racist for wanting a photo ID? Oh, and a immigration form of some kind to prove that I'm a U.S. citizen. It's another subject for another video, perhaps, but are my employers racist for that? Renting a house. And I have had on occasion to rent a house for an extended period of time in my life. I had to show photo ID. They needed a photo ID. They photocopied it. They put it in the rental agreement. Was the landlord racist? I don't know. I can tell you one thing: the two times I've ever rented a house, one time it was a white female. The other time it was Hispanic male. Buying a house. Now, I bought houses several times. I had to show photo ID for that. Applying for a mortgage. I've applied for multiple mortgages in my lifetime. I had to show photo ID for that. Photo ID and Social Security card. Both of them were taken from me and photocopied. Renting a car. I have to show a photo ID for that, not only to prove who I am, but to prove that I am a licensed driver. I've been in rental agencies with all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds and all sorts of racial makeups, and I've never heard somebody scream racism at the top of their lungs when the attendant behind the counter asks for their license, their photo ID. Buying a car, I have to show photo ID when I buy a car, not only to show who I am, but that I am a licensed driver and I have permission from the state of Florida or Georgia or wherever I've lived to buy a car and operate it on the roads of that state. And again, I've been in dealerships where I'm not the only person in the dealership. There are people in those dealerships from multiple racial backgrounds. Nobody ever screamed racism, not one time. I've been on this earth 55 years. I've been in car dealerships for multiple decades. Whether buying a car, repairing a car, whatever. Never heard anyone scream racism in an auto dealership, not one time. Never. Applying for or renewing my driver's license. Hey, I have to turn in my old license to renew for a new one. both my daughters had to show school IDs, which were now photo IDs, in order to get their driver's licenses. Is that racist? Sexist, maybe. Maybe not. I don't know. You guys got to tell me. I don't think it is, but I'm just one man, a white guy, evil white guy. I'm just one evil white man. One evil white man's opinion on this. Getting on an airplane. I've flown. I hate flying. I hate airplanes. I hate airports. But in order to get through check-in, in order to get through TSA inspection, in order to get on the airplane, and sometimes when I claim my luggage, I have to show photo ID. Is that racist? I've been in line with people from all cultures, all races, all creeds, trying to get on the same airplane. Never screened racism once. Not my experience. Getting married. When I got married, I've only been married once, but when I applied for my marriage license, and my now ex-wife was there with me, we both had to show photo ID. Is that racist? I mean, she was white too, so maybe not. But what if I've been marrying a Hispanic lady? I dated several Hispanic ladies, and two of them I really thought I could marry them if I had gone to the marriage license office to get a license, and they had required a photo ID of both of us to fill out the marriage certificate. Was it going to be racist? Don't know. Don't think so. Buying a gun. I own a gun. I bought it online, but it was shipped to a gun dealer locally, and I had to pick the gun up at the gun dealer. I had to fill out forms. I had to show photo ID. I had to go through a background check. Is that racist? I've seen people who don't look like me buy guns before. They all show photo ID. Nobody ever screamed racism at the top of their lungs. Adopting a pet. Well, I've adopted a couple of pets in my lifetime. I had to prove who I was. I had to show photo ID. I've been in cat shelters with people of all different races. They all had to show ID if they adopted a pet. Hell, some of them had to show, all of us had to show ID at this one cat place, local to me, to get in. We had to show photo ID to get in. Nobody complained. Just hand them your ID. Oh, you look like this, except now you have the goatee. Picture you don't. Getting a hotel room. When I check in a hotel, I had to show my ID. Getting a hunting license, a fishing license. Those are photo ID things too. You have to show who you are to get the license. I know for a fact I've seen black people, Hispanic people, Asian people, Native American people. I've seen them hunt. I've seen them fish. Don't think any of them ever complained about having to show an ID to get that license, though. It could be wrong, but I don't think I am. Buying a cell phone. I had to show photo ID I have service through AT&T. Every time I bought or renewed a contract or bought a cell phone, I had to show photo ID to prove who I was when I was signing that contract. Again, I've been in the stores with people of all different races, and nobody ever complained, not a one time. Getting into a casino, well, again, this is a failing of mine because the only casino I've ever been near were on the 2 times I was on cruise ships. So I don't know about the casino thing, but if you have to show an ID to get into a bar, and they serve alcohol in casinos, I mean, the logic follows that if you're going to try and get a drink at a bar, and you're going to try and get a drink at a casino, and you're going to gamble in a casino, and you have to be over 21 to drink or gamble, you have to show ID to get in. I don't recall people protesting in front of a casino screaming at the top of their lungs about racism because they require a photo ID to get into a casino. And interestingly, a lot of casinos that I know of are owned by Native Americans who are a minority. Are they racist? I don't know that minorities can be racist if you listen to the people out there on the streets throwing bricks at people, shooting cops with lasers to blind them and broil their eyeballs. But that's just me, you know. Getting a prescription, especially if your prescription is a controlled substance like Oxy or Percocet or something like that, you have to show an ID to show that it's you who are being prescribed these things. I have to show ID when I pick up my prescriptions for my diabetes, type 2, by the way, well under control. But diabetes medication is not a controlled substance. And the worst thing it's going to do to you is make you sick to your stomach. But I still have to show my ID for that. Getting a permit for a rally or a protest. A protest. Protest. Got to have an ID for that. If you're going to get a permit to go hold a rally or go hold a protest legally anyway, of course. I mean, we all know that most people don't protest legally here. They just break in and, oh, you know, I'm not going down that road. We all know. But if you're going to apply for a permit, that's usually through a city or a county. You have to show an ID for the permit. Donating blood. They have to be able to trace the blood in case there's a problem. Now, I can't donate blood owing to my diabetes. They generally don't want my blood because it's not healthy or whatever. But I have donated blood before I was diagnosed, and I had to show an ID so they could, you know, trace where that blood came from in case there was a problem. Let's see, buying mature video games. Now, you snowflakes out there sitting in mommy's basement eating your Hot Pockets and getting ready to go to your next protest, you know, and trying to figure out which bathroom you're going to use today. You should know all about these video games and the fact that you have to show ID to get those video games that are particularly nasty. Are you offended? Are you screaming racism because you have to show an ID for that? This one I had to look up in a couple of places because this one surprised the hell out of me. Buying nail polish at CVS, which is a drugstore chain if you don't have one of those around. And maybe at other drugstore chains too, but this one in particular said at CVS, buying nail polish. And I guess because maybe it's, you know, I mean, if you sniff it long enough and make it lightheaded, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. But is buying nail polish and having to show ID to buy it at CVS, is that racist? Might be a little goofy, but, you know, I don't know. I've never been behind somebody in line buying nail polish at a CVS. I generally don't go to CVS's. So, I don't know. But that one shocked me. I had to look that up in a couple places to cross-check. And that's the thing. Buying certain over-the-counter medications. You know, NyQuil, cough medicine. Last time I bought cough medicine, I had to show my ID. Me, 55-year-old white guy with gray hair, had to show ID that I was legally allowed to buy cough medicine. And some of it has alcohol in it. But the cash register won't allow purchase of these things unless you put an ID, put a birth date in. So I had to show ID. Is that racism? And finally, on this big long list that I've been entertaining you with, all tobacco products, cigarettes, cigars, pipe tobacco, if they even still sell that, dip, snuff, chew, jewels, e-cigs, papers. Hell, one time I even had to show ID to buy lighters. all tobacco-related products, you have to show ID in order to buy that. And I've seen black people, Hispanic people, Asian people, all kinds of people showing ID to buy these things. And nobody screamed racism. Not once. Never. Never. And yet, it's racist to ask for an ID to vote. The most important single thing a citizen of the United States can do to affect the future of this country, and it's racist to ask for an ID to vote. It's voter suppression to prove who you are to vote in this country. Really. I would love somebody down in the comments section to back that up for me. Take your best shot. I think you're an idiot if you think like that. Bottom line, if you think that voter ID requirements suppress votes, you're an idiot. Driver's licenses barely cost anything. Most states have the ability to do a free photo ID. I know Florida does. If you don't want to buy a driver's license or you don't drive, you can still get a free photo ID. It literally takes no time out of your life to do it. It suppresses voter fraud. It helps secure the integrity of our elections. And it makes sure that only citizens, which are the only people who are legally allowed to vote in this country, vote. Not illegals, not dead people, not people who have lost their ability to vote for whatever reason. Legal citizens of this country are the only ones that should be voting, and you should have to prove that by showing your photo ID. It isn't racism, it's the right thing. And if you think it's racism, you're part of the problem. I'm sorry, that's how I feel. And I'm done with this rant. I thank you for stopping by. I hope you were entertained. I hope you were informed a little bit. If you have a countervailing argument, have at it. But try and be nice. Have a good one.